This is the 109 oven ready prime rib with the bone in. As you can see, it has all the short ribs still attached to it. This is what we're going to be making our large two-person smoked grilled ribeye steak out of. So it does need a little preparation. The first thing we need to do is what's called Frenching this. So we want to take and expose the bones so you can see it. So the first thing we're going to do, make sure you have clean gloves, a cutting glove. And for the first step, you're going to use your French knife. And you can see on this, it's got an angle, so it sort of comes up that way. You can maybe see it better this way. There's an angle to it. So what we want to do is we're going to cut a line that goes from here and across. And what that's going to do is going to expose our bones for us, but we want to make sure we got about 2 inches left on each one. So again, we're going to sort of come across that. So the first thing we're going to do with our French knife is going to come right across the top and cut that out. Okay, so if it doesn't do that fat, it's got a big fat cap like this one does, you're going to take and sort of peel that back a little bit and only go to the bone. Don't go any further down than until you hit the bone. Okay, and then once you've hit the bone, push the fat away. Okay, and then come back under with your knife and take this off. You can take it off in two sections. Go ahead and take your knife and cut it down so it's easier to work with. But don't try to do it all in one, and don't cut up under the roast either. You don't want to separate the roast from the bone. So we're going to go ahead and just peel this fat off. So there's one piece. You could have a trim pan over here to the back. Now you can really see well in here. So again, we're going to take our knife and go right up underneath here and take it away from the bone. Okay, and again, not going under the roast. All we want to do is separate this piece out. And now you can see we have a nice even strip along here. And this is where we're going to call Frenching the bones, and this is where we make it so the bone comes out of the end and you can see all the pieces of the bone. And so this one's got a little bit of a fat cap on it, so go ahead and take some of that off too. Some of them won't have this, so don't please over trim these or do any kind of trimming that's not necessary. But since this one has such a large amount of fat on it, we will take a little bit of it off. And that's just, it doesn't need it. One, two, it's going to just start flaring up on the grill when it gets cooked. So again, you can take and stand it up like this too, and always work away from you when you're shaving the fat off. So in case the knife slips, it doesn't come back at you. Always work away from you. You can see now we've got that right down, so we've got a nice roundness to it. See, it's nice and even along here, and you'll see it better that way. You can see it's nice and even now all across here, and we've got this little bit of fat we're going to take away. Okay, so once we're done with that, you don't want to use the big knife for the next step. Okay, the next step, we're going to use only a boning knife or a paring knife. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to expose all of these bones. Okay, so when you look down inside of here, you'll see that there are 7 bones in each rack that come across here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our small, either the boning knife or paring knife. Do not use a large French knife, and do not use a slicing knife or anything else. And so we're going to just go right down in between each bone. And we're going to first thing we're going to do is separate the meat out, okay? And just go right to the point. See where the tip of my knife is? Where it comes right to the edge of the meat. Don't go any further. And we're going to take out those little sections of meat in there first. And for those of you who like flavorful little morsels, KS&P those and throw them on the grill. They're really tasty. But I digress for a moment. So here we are. We're taking these pieces of meat out again, using your French. You're not using a French knife. Using a boning knife like this small one, or a paring knife will do the same thing. But again, you'll see when my knife comes, I stop when we get right to the edge of the roast. You don't go in. You don't want to go into the roast or anything else. You can see we're starting to expose the bones now. And what we want to do is that's for the presentation. So it makes a very pretty presentation for the guests when they see it, when it comes out on the plate. And then it matches our picture as well, because that's the way we photographed it for advertising. So, and then we're going to take these later and cover them in foil. So they're looking, again, put our scraps in our scrap pan, work neatly when you can. So now you'll see we have all of our bones exposed. You can see all our bones now, We have a gap in all of them. So the next thing we want to do is take all this meat off of those so they are nice and clean. So when you look on the back of the bone, here there's sort of a little casing, and you want to do, again, working away from you, put your knife in and you'll see that casing separates right off of there. So just take your knife and the blade and sort of scrape down. And you'll see here on this front one too, so the knife goes in there, you can see how it scrapes away. It's a little awkward trying to show this on the camera, but you'll see how that just peels away from the bone. So what we want to do is go ahead, peel that down, then you're just going to take your knife and go ahead and trim right around it. And you'll see that once we do that, you have a perfectly clean bone now that makes just a real pretty presentation for the steak that we're going to be serving our guests at Smoky Bones. So look how pretty that is. That's a beautiful clean bone now. So we want to make sure all the rest of them are the same way. So the same thing, work down away from you. Take your knife and cut all that material away from it. Now, don't cook this stuff. This stuff is really not that good. It's going to be, it's like cartilage. It's not got a lot of flavor. And then two, once you get those bones clean, level off your cut in between here. So again, it makes it nice. You turn this sideways, and again, when you take your knife, working down away from you, you'll see that the casing folds away, right away from the bone very easily. Okay, so again, we're going to do all 7 of these this way, so we have a very pretty, what we call French styled prime rib, bone-in ribeye that we're going to be serving our guests. Isn't that pretty now? So again, that bone, and this is really part of the whole wow of the show when this comes out, because we're trying to give that really decadent appearance to the steak, having the bone in it. A lot of, which is true, having the bone in it gives a richer flavor. And so not only we're going to smoke it lightly, but then grilling it with the bone in really adds to the flavor experience, the visual experience, everything else. And you know, truly what's going to separate us from our competitor is when one of our fire starters brings this to the table and sets that down in front of our guests. Talk about that wow moment, that exciting moment when a guest sees this beautiful, lightly smoked, hand-rubbed seasonings, grilled to perfection ribeye. It truly will be a unique experience that nobody can replicate, making us the go-to, not the Me Too restaurant, in the casual dining segment. I think that, my fellow fire starters, is what you really need to be excited about, is how much this is really going to separate us from anybody. And even though, you know, people look at us as a barbecue restaurant, I think this dish alone right here will truly set that benchmark for all others to follow when we get out there. So again, we're going to get these all cleaned, and the next thing I'll show you is how we go ahead and wrap these with foil to protect them.